It all began with a sentence no billionaire ever expects to hear: "Sir, it's all gone." Those words punched through Benjamin Hale's chest like a cold metal spike. One moment he was the man whose signature could move markets, the next, he was standing in the ruins of everything he had built. And yet, he had no idea that the smallest, most overlooked person in his empire, the quiet janitor with soft eyes and old shoes, was holding the one thing that could change everything. A single piece of paper. A paper Benjamin never knew he needed. A paper that would force him to confront who he truly was, and who he was meant to become. Benjamin Hale used to say money talked. He was wrong. Sometimes, it whispers. And sometimes, someone else whispers for it. Benjamin's downfall didn't begin with numbers on a screen. It began with the way he walked past people without seeing them. It began with the day he stopped thanking the receptionist, or asking after the security guard's ill daughter. It began the moment he believed he was untouchable. Chapter 1 began on the morning the world proved him wrong. Benjamin woke with the same habits he'd had for 20 years, espresso, cold shower, a glance at the skyline only billionaires could afford. He buttoned his tailored suit, adjusted his silver tie clip, and felt the world bend slightly beneath his feet, like it always had. His penthouse smelled faintly of pine wood and victory. He didn't know that outside those windows, the city was already humming with the news he hadn't heard yet. When he arrived at Hale Industries, 3 of his vice presidents were already waiting, ashen-faced, avoiding his eyes. The lobby felt different. The air was tight, suffocating. Even the marble floor seemed colder under his shoes. "Sir," his CFO whispered, "we've been compromised." The next few minutes blurred: a cyber attack targeting their encrypted files, a manipulated investment report, a sudden crash in stock confidence, frozen assets, partners withdrawing. Everything Benjamin believed was locked, insured, guaranteed, was slipping through his fingers. He sat in the boardroom as if anchored to his chair, unable to breathe properly. His empire, worth billions just yesterday, was now a crumbling sandcastle being washed away by an unseen tide. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Sir, it's all gone." His ears rang. His eyes blurred. The room seemed to tilt. News spread like wildfire. Reporters camped outside the building. Investors demanded explanations. Lawsuits began forming in the shadows. And in the middle of it all, Benjamin was left with the same question repeating like a cracked record: how did this happen? But the truth was, he didn't have time to process anything. Desperation has a smell, and even the most loyal people can catch its scent. Within hours, half of his executives resigned, sending carefully worded emails about unforeseen circumstances. Friends who once fought for a seat at his table now slipped quietly out the back door. By evening, Benjamin returned to his penthouse, only to realize he no longer felt like he belonged there. Everything looked too polished, too expensive, too empty. He poured himself a drink, but his hand trembled so badly he set the glass down untouched. The next morning, he returned to the office to pack what little was left. Hale Industries no longer felt like his, just a hollow building wearing his name like a borrowed jacket. As he entered his old office, there was only one other person there, the janitor. A thin older man with gentle hands and tired shoulders, sweeping the same corner he swept every morning. Benjamin had never bothered to learn his name. The janitor looked up, hesitant. "Sir. I think you forgot something." Benjamin blinked, confused. The janitor approached, holding out a single folded sheet of paper. "This was in your private mail tray last night. I didn't want it getting thrown away." Benjamin almost didn't take it. What difference could one piece of paper make now? But eventually, he reached out, and when he unfolded it, his breath caught. His father's handwriting. A letter written years ago, never sent. A letter with the very blueprint of the moral code Benjamin had abandoned along the way. He read the first line: "Ben, if you're reading this, it means you're standing at a crossroads." And something inside him cracked. Chapter 2 began in that moment, not with wealth, not with power, but with a man sitting in an empty office, realizing the only thing left worth saving was himself. Benjamin read the letter again and again. His father wrote about the early days, when Benjamin was a boy who helped carry lumber at construction sites, who offered water to workers in the heat, who promised he'd build something that made people's lives better, not worse. His father warned about losing sight of humility, warned about the seductive nature of success. If you ever forget who you are, son, the letter ended, life will remind you. But that reminder is a gift, not a punishment. For the first time in years, Benjamin cried, quietly, shoulders shaking, hands gripping the letter as if it were a lifeline. The janitor stood by the door, unsure whether to leave. "Sir, you okay?" Benjamin wiped his face. "What's your name?" The man looked startled. David. David Ramirez." "David," Benjamin said, breathing shakily, "thank you." David nodded awkwardly. Everyone deserves to have their important things returned to them, even if they don't realize they're important. That sentence lodged itself deep inside Benjamin's chest. The next few weeks were the hardest of his life. He moved out of the penthouse. He sold his luxury cars. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. He walked through the city unnoticed for the first time in years, no assistants, no chauffeurs, no expensive suits. Just Benjamin Hale, alone with the ghost of the man he used to be. But something unexpected happened. People he had once ignored, doormen, baristas, building staff, maintenance workers, began treating him with a kindness that felt foreign. Not because he was powerful, but because he was human. One day at a modest diner, the waitress refilled his coffee and said, "Rough week?" Benjamin laughed, a real laugh, for the first time since losing everything. And that night, he wrote in a notebook, "Maybe the world isn't ending. Maybe it's beginning again." Slowly, he rebuilt his life, not as a billionaire, but as a person. He reached out to employees he had neglected. He apologized to partners he had wronged. He volunteered at the community center his company had once funded only for tax benefits. He met families whose lives were impacted by the collapse of his company and helped them find new jobs, and all the while, he kept the letter close. Folded. Worn. Sacred. Months passed before new evidence emerged. The cyber attack had been orchestrated by a rival firm. With the help of a small team, including David, who had become a quiet but steady presence, Benjamin provided testimony, and the courts returned many of his assets, but he didn't take everything back. That he took only what he needed to restart responsibly. The rest, he used to rebuild the lives affected by the collapse. The day he reopened his company, not as Hale Industries, but as Hale and Ramirez Community Innovations, he asked David to cut the ribbon beside him. David shook his head in disbelief. "Sir, I'm just a janitor." Benjamin smiled softly. "You were the only person who thought to hand me the one thing everyone else overlooked. You saw me when I didn't see myself." In the end, the crowd applauded, not the billionaire he once was, but the man he had become, and as Benjamin stepped forward, he whispered his father's final line under his breath, "Life's reminders are gifts." The message lingered in the air for everyone watching. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what truly matters. Sometimes the smallest person in the room holds the biggest key to your future, and sometimes, a single piece of paper can save an entire life.